If you have hired an employee in your organization, now you have a vacancy for the position of a data analyst. Now, the candidate to whom you have hired for this position, data analyst, you have to give him or her the access of the project to work on. So let's consider that he or she has to handle the Snowflake project. So for that, let us go and give the Snowflake project directly. Is it right way? Or do we have to give some credentials before starting up a project? Hi, I am M. Asif Hussain from KnowHow Academy. What are we going to learn in this video? We are going to learn and understand how to create a virtual warehouse, how to create the role, how to grant the access to the user, how to set up the user with roles, and we are even going to see how to drop the warehouse. So by the end of this video, you could get a very clear idea on how we have to create the virtual warehouse both with the query and with the interface. Along with that, we are even going to learn how we have to create the roles, give the access to the new user, how to set up an account, and how we have to go and give the user the role and how we have to drop it when it is not required. So watch till the end. My dear viewers, here I have my Snowflake. So in this Snowflake, what I'm going to do, if you would like to create a new virtual warehouse, then what we generally do, we come here to our admin, and on this admin we have a warehouse, and here we can go and click on new warehouse, where we can give our warehouse name and the type of the warehouse and the size of the warehouse depending upon the credits that we are going to use and depending upon the data that we are going to utilize it here. So at last we can even have the advanced options of auto resuming it. Okay, so whenever the warehouse we would like to resume it, we would like to resume it, and if we would like to suspend the warehouse, if it is inactive, we can suspend it. So that option is also available. So this is the way that we can go and create a warehouse using an interface of a Snowflake. So now let me go and walk you with the very clear idea. Okay, so how we have to go and create a virtual warehouse with a query. So for this, let me go and create a virtual warehouse first. So I am just writing creating a virtual warehouse. Let's consider that you have hired that particular employee for the position or for the role as a data analyst. Now, what are the roles and responsibilities of a data analyst? That they have to gather the information from multiple data sources where the client or customers give them. Then they have to analyze the data, they have to transform the data, they have to clean the data, they have to understand the modeling in the data. So a lot of the things that they have to handle it, but completely it depends upon the data. Am I right? So now you have hired for a data analyst. Now we are giving the access of the warehouse to a data analyst. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going and creating a warehouse. Let us consider for data analyst. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to write create. Now what I'm creating a warehouse. So here create warehouse. So we have got the keyword warehouse. Now we have to give the warehouse name. Data analyst, the short form is DA underscore warehouse. So DA warehouse, I would like to give the name of the warehouse. Now with warehouse, so what I'm going to give, I'm going to give the size, at how much size that this warehouse is going to use it. So for that, let me go and consider, I would like to create small. The size that I would like to consider is small. So earlier we have seen that X is small. X small is much more smaller when compared to small. So as this particular warehouse, we are creating it for data analyst, then data analyst has to handle with multiple data sets and multiple data. So just we are increasing the credits for this particular warehouse. So that's why we have considered it small here. So now let me come down, and here what I'm going to give, I'm going to give the warehouse type. So warehouse underscore warehouse type. So here let me give the warehouse type as a standard warehouse. So this is the best warehouse that we would like to give. And now here I have to mention that whether I have to enable my auto suspend or not. So I will write auto suspend. So here auto suspend, when it should auto suspend, that is also a question. So let us consider 300 as a seconds here. So now when you would like to resume it, that also I am mentioning it here, auto resume, I would like to make it true. Then I'm going to write the minimum cluster count that I have to use it here. Minimum cluster count, which is 1, that I would like to consider, and in the same way the maximum cluster count, I'm considering only 1 cluster count here. I'm using it as 1. Okay, so I have used a cluster count. Now let us understand the scaling policy. The scaling policy also, it is standard here. So as if we go and do it in a using the interface by creating a warehouse, we can avoid all these steps that we have to write it here. That's not a problem. So I am creating a standard scaling policy. So now what I'm going to do, let me go and execute it. So I'm just selecting all these that I have created and I'm going to executing it. We can see the warehouse da_wh is successfully created. Am I right? So what we have done, we have successfully created a warehouse for the new warehouse, that is data analyst. Now what we are going to do, we are going to create the role for this data analyst and we are giving the access. It means that we are granting the access to this particular user. So for that, what we have to do, now let us go and create a role. So what I am going to do, I am going to create a role. So for this we need to write create and we have to write role, and role I am considering it as data analyst. Okay, I'm creating a role as data analyst. Now what I am doing, I'm granting the access to this user. So grant user on what I'm granting to this data analyst. What I'm granting the warehouse to use. So the warehouse that we have to consider here. So what is the warehouse name? da_wh. To what role? To role, what is the role that I have considered here? Data analyst. To role data analyst. So that's what I have considered it here. So now what I am going to do, as you can see that I am creating a role data analyst. So let me go and execute it. The role data analyst is successfully created. Grant usage. As you can see that I have granted the usage on this warehouse to whom? To the data analyst. So now we have created the role and we have granted the access. Now we have to set up the user to the roles. Okay, we have to set up the user to the roles. So now what we are going to do, we have to set up a user to the role that we have created. Okay, so for this what I am doing, I am going and creating a user here, and let me consider the user name as da1, and the password that I would like to consider for this one is also da1. Okay, so that it will be easy for me to log in using the password. So now what is the login name? That name also I have to give it. So login name is equal to da1. The same thing I would like to give it, as I do not want to get confused whenever I am trying to logging in with the new name or different password. I have kept it same. Okay, so we have given the password da1, we have given the login name da1. So now what we have to give, we have to give the default role for this particular thing. So default role, the role that we have created, which is data analyst. All right, so we have given the default role. Now we have to give the default warehouse that we have created. So default warehouse that we have created, it is also da_wh. All right, so now we have given data warehouse, but if you have to must change the password, is it required or not, that we have to specify it here. So I'm just giving it false. Okay, I'm just giving it false. All right, so now what I am doing, I'm setting up the user to this particular role. So for this I'm creating user da1, which is a username. So password is also da1, login name is also da1, and the default role that we have created is data analyst, and the warehouse that we have created is da_wh. So that's what I'm giving it here. Now let's go and execute it. as you can see, the user DA1 is successfully created. What is happening? The DA1 user successfully created. So now, as we have created this user DA1, what we can do, we can give this login name, we can give this password to newly hired employee as a data analyst, and that particular person can go and log in with these credentials, and there they can use the worksheets, they can write the queries, they can do transformations, whatever they would like to do under Snowflake. So what we have done, we have created the user, but we did not still grant the role. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm just granting the role here. So grant role for what? For data analyst to which user? To user DA1. Okay, I'm granting the role to this data analyst to user DA1. So now we have granted this one. As you can see, the statement executed successfully. So now, my dear viewers, if someone wants to come and go and log in it, so for example, so if I would like to log in with some another account, okay, I can go and happily log in it with this particular DA1, which is my password, DA1, which is my login name. Okay, so now, my dear viewers, what I have done, I have created the user and I have granted the role data analyst to this user DA1 which I have created. So whichever new employee you are hiring, so to whomever you would like to give the access of the Snowflake, so what you can do, you can give this username, you can give this password and tell them that you can use these credentials in order to do some queries, in order to do some transformations or work with Snowflake. So if you would like to drop a warehouse that you have created, so we can use the same syntax of how we use for SQL, drop warehouse. And what is the warehouse name that we have considered? That warehouse you can consider DA_WH. So if we try to execute this one, then we can see that the warehouse is successfully dropped. So now we don't have D_warehouse in our Snowflake. So this is how you can even drop the user as well, by writing drop username. So here what we are doing, we are implementing the virtual warehouse. Okay, so how we are implementing it? Using a query. But the same warehouse, if you would like to create, we can even create it using the interface. So that is also possible. All right, so in this video we have learned how to create a virtual warehouse, how to create a role, how to grant the access to the user, how to set up the user to the role, how to grant role to the user in Snowflake. Thank you for choosing KnowHow Academy as your source for IT knowledge. We are always here to help you to navigate the tech world. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. Stay curious and keep learning.